Also tell you that Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer has condemned violent clashes at what is being called the country's largest ever far-right rally. Now, the London protest led by activist Tommy Robinson saw injuries to more than 24 police officers and sparked fears of a rising extremist movement. For News Central, senior international correspondent Afua Hagan reports.
Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer has vowed his government will not tolerate intimidation or racism after London saw its largest ever far-right protest, one marked by violent clashes with police. On Saturday, up to 150,000 people gathered in central London for a rally led by far-right activist Tommy Robinson. The event quickly descended into violence, with bottles and flares hurled at police. 26 officers were injured, 4 seriously, and at least 24 arrests were made. The Metropolitan Police say more will follow. Prime Minister Starmer condemned the violence and intimidation, stressing that peaceful protest is a core British value, but assaults on police and threats against minority communities will not be tolerated. He added, Britain is proudly built on tolerance, diversity and respect, and vowed not to allow the Union Jack to be used as a symbol of division. The violence erupted after some demonstrators tried to breach police lines near a countermarch by the group Stand Up to Racism. Officers say they were kicked and punched as they tried to maintain order. The rally drew far-right speakers from across Europe and North America, including a video address from billionaire Elon Musk. Musk urged the crowd to oppose the Labour government, warning violence is coming to you. Anti-racism group Hope Not Hate described the demonstration as the largest far-right gathering in British history, warning of the growing normalisation of anti-Muslim and anti-migrant rhetoric in the UK. London remains on alert. Police say they will continue reviewing footage to track down more offenders in what many are calling an unprecedented and alarming show of far-right extremism in Britain. For News Central, I'm Afua Hagan.
Afua, thank you so much for coming around. Now, let's just look at the situation in London. How significant is Prime Minister Keir Starmer's statement, and how is a government likely to respond to this rise in far-right activity? Can you please unmute? I can't hear you from here.
People feeling that Keir Starmer hasn't done enough or anything to try and stem the rise of far-right extremism in the UK. It's been dressed up as anti-immigration rallies, but it's just racism by a different name. Now, it now depends on what Sir Keir Starmer and his government plan to do about these rallies. You know, he spoke about maintaining the need for peaceful protest, which has been at the core values of the United Kingdom for hundreds of years, but condemning the violence that can occur when protests like this happen. He's trying to thread a very narrow needle here, right? So he's denying legitimacy to intimidation and to racism, but also trying not to curb civil liberties. A lot of people are saying that he needs to come down harder on what is, frankly, just these racist protests, stamp them out completely, have robust policing and a real investigatory response. The Metropolitan Police made arrests, they've got more arrests to come. But I think the real mark of Keir Starmer in this particular crisis will be what happens next. What is he going to do along with his government to make sure that protests like this, if they happen, remain peaceful? But also, how have we got to the point where you have hundreds of thousands of people marching and counter-marching in central London because of this anti-immigration sentiment that has been whipped up by activists like Tommy Robinson?
So what do you make of Starmer's comments about the Union Jack? Why did he feel the need to address the flag so directly?
Well, flags and the running up of flags and the flying of flags, we saw hundreds of thousands of flags at that protest over the weekend, has really become an issue here in the United Kingdom. The Union Jack and the St. George's flag, particularly the red and white flag, the England flag, is something that has been co-opted by right-wing racist groups for years. People like the National Front use those flags as a symbol of intimidation. And now Sir Keir Starmer wants to try and take back the flag, take back that symbol of pride, that it is a flag that can be flown for anyone who's British. But these far-right groups are still using this flag, particularly the St. George's flag, as a sign of intimidation. What Sir Keir Starmer would like is for the flag to be reclaimed, taken back, so everybody feels that they can fly it. And I think that's why he felt it was so important to mention the flag, because it has been something that it has been a real issue lately. Lots and lots of flags going up on streets all around the country. Some people see it as intimidation, and actually far-right groups have used it as a symbol of intimidation for many, many years.
You talk about intimidation, and anti-racism groups are warning. This was the largest far-right protest in British history. How worried should the public be about normalization of far-right rhetoric?
The public should be very worried about the normalisation of far-right rhetoric. It's been normalised by the media, it's been normalised by the press, it's been normalised by the government. Islamophobia is rampant, anti-Semitism is rampant as well, but particularly the anti-immigration sentiment is being normalised, but it's also being co-opted. But like women's rights issues have been hijacked by this anti-immigration sentiment. Lots of these protests, the protesters say, are in the name of women. It's all about protecting women. But if we look at the protesters that were out in force last year and last summer's riots, 41% of those men were found guilty of domestic violence. So the very people that say they are protecting women are actually guilty of harming women. So women's rights have been co-opted for this anti-immigration and frankly racist movement. This has been normalised, like I say, by the press, by government, as something that is simply being allowed to happen. So you have these protests popping up, not just in the streets of London, but outside hotels that house asylum seekers. And asylum seekers, as well as people of any ethnic minority in Britain, now feel pretty scared.
It's quite interesting that in all of this, we still see a person like Elon Musk with a video addressing the grabbed headlines, so to speak. How unusual is it to see such an international voice weighing in on a UK protest?
It is unusual to see an international voice weigh in such a domestic issue. But when it comes to Elon Musk, well, first of all, he has a worldwide following, right? He is online, and he also owns one of the biggest online platforms that is often used by far-right and anti-immigration protesters and activists to spread their word. So he's very much across this and very much aligns with that sentiment. And, he popped up on this giant screen in central London calling for the overthrowing of the British government and saying that violence will come to people if that doesn't happen. Now, a lot of people saying that he should be in charge with inciting violence and he shouldn't be allowed to whip up this kind of sentiment. I would agree that that is fundamentally true. He shouldn't be getting involved in domestic issues in the United Kingdom and inciting violence. So it is highly unusual that he has waded in this way, but in this age of social media, where he is number one, big on social media, and number two, owns one of the biggest platforms, it's not unusual.
Thank you so much, Afua, for sharing the details with us.